And we are about to go live. We are live on Facebook. Finally, live with Philippe Lewis, the Philippe Lewis. This man is one of a kind. He is a community leader. I'm just making this one up, but he's a community leader. He was talking about consent. I remember him talking about consent back in the day, and I thought it was cheesy. I was a little bit judgmental of him. I was like, why is this guy talking about consent all the time? And then the whole Me Too movement broke up, and I was like, oh, maybe Philippe was on to something. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate this man. He's a good friend of mine. Occasionally we get together and have some fun. And
definitely.
And yeah, I see him. He's also a bit of a controversial character, but he's always been awesome to me, and I deeply respect and love him, and see his shining soul. Tell us, Philippe, all about the language of touch.
Well, I just want to address controversial. So controversial is just something that kind of twists your moral panties a little bit, you know. So some people hate that. It just freaks them out. They're like, oh, I don't know if I can think about these things in this particular way. But to me, that's what generates conversation. And in the conversation, we learn with each other. And so,
and that's how not being a little bit controversial, then maybe you're not living your full light.
Yeah, maybe you're not living at the edge of the topic that you're digging into and kind of pulling out gold from. Exactly. You know, so that's one way to look at it. I'm not going to say I'm right about this. It just feels good to me to be in the middle of these conversations where we don't exactly know what the right thing to think is, and out of that wisdom naturally emerges. So, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the language of touch and how that came up for me. So, I've had cats most of my life, and there's something about cats where you kind of learn. You learn with them. You're like, oh, you want to be petted this way, you want to be scratched this way. And so this one time in my life, I got this from my ex. My ex shipped me her Persian kitty cat, who's a total princess, like just like you would imagine Persian cats to be. Well, she's exactly that. And her name was Grisabelle. If you ever seen the show, the musical Cats, and so I would like try to pet her, and I already knew that about her because I when I was with my ex, she had the cat, and I would try to pet her, and she would be like, "Yeah, no, exactly, maybe not. I hate you. I'm gonna go away now. You're doing a shitty job." And I'm like, I'm translating, right? But clearly, her body is saying things that is telling me that, you know, I'm not doing a good job. And then over months and months and months, I learned to touch her just right, and it is in that kind of like inner translation of what was working and what was not working that I learned how to touch her. But she never actually said a word. Oh yeah, she batted my hand a few times and she hissed at me a few times, but it was really never a real word exchange. And then in that process, I realized, oh, there's a language there. There's something that's being said by her body to my body, and I'm saying something to her body with my body. And it's a form of language, and I called it the language of touch. Now, there's a real name for it. It's called haptic language, and it's a subset of body language. So, there's ways that we speak to each other through the ways that we gaze at each other, even through this video call. There's ways that we turn towards each other or away from each other. That's called mirroring. There's ways that we breathe with each other. Now, if you've ever been with a lover or with someone you really love, just because they're, you just love them and they're close to you, and then you hug, and then you take these breaths together, like, and in that process, you co-regulate and you imitate each other. There's this sort of process of call and response between your body and their body. And that call and response is not that different than me saying something, you nod your head, and then I know you're listening, or I know you're with me, or I look at you and you look at me instead of looking at your phone or something like that, or looking at your email right now while we're on this conversation. And so I know that there's a connection because that call and response is happening moment to moment to moment to moment. Now that happens verbally and with body language and verbally, but it happens on the phone too, right? You're talking to someone and say, oh yeah, this happened to me today. And, oh, I made the best food. And the other person's like, yeah, wow, tell me about that. And that sort of yeah, wow, and the sounds and the words gives a sense of, I heard what you said. I want you to know that. Keep going. And then you get that sense there's a dance, there's a conversation going on. Well, the same is true in touch. And so we see it more particularly with cats because they're very good at saying yes, hell yes, yes, maybe, no, and hell no. I mean, we know what the hell no looks like with a cat, right? It's like no, fuck no. Or they turn away and they run away, or they try to slinker away from your touch. You know, you try to pet them and they go, oh, not really, no. Or, better try next time. Or the maybe is like you're touching them and you kind of like feel them like kind of freezing, not freezing, but they're like stopping. They're kind of checking you out, see if you're going to do a good job, right? Or if they really like it, they push against your touch. They push against your hand. So
they start
purring, exactly. So sounds. So the same is true with humans. The tricky bit with humans is that because we're humans, our range of expression is much greater. Like we're still animals underneath the surface, but above the surface, we have this whole other layer of brain inside of brain beyond the mammalian brain. We have the neocortex, so the prefrontal cortex. And I'm not a biologist, so I'm probably botching this in some ways, but we have more than just what mammals have. And we're able to develop a much greater complexity of signs and symbols that signify that we hear each other, or that we want more of each other, or that we want less of each other. We want less of this particular interaction. So, but with animals, it's very simple. It looks like more, less, faster, slower, here or there. That's about it.
right.
You look, yeah, it's very, very simple. But with these these 6 words, so to speak, you develop, or these 6, you could call them letters of an alphabet that creates words and sentences, if you want to look at it that way, or 6 steps in the dance, you can develop very complex ways of interacting.
Okay, so let's hear some of these. I want examples. That's what I want human, real life examples.
Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about, so let's talk about pressure, for example. So more or less, in pressure would look like pressing in or moving away. If something feels good, you would move in, and if something doesn't feel good, you kind of skirt away, right? Faster or slower could look like you start to move your body faster because it's exciting and you want more of that. So even if the person is not moving fast, that's happened to you in sex, I'm sure, where you're like, that feels really good, I want more of it, right? And I want it faster, I want more intensity or I want the rhythm to go up. So you start to move your body faster to actually increase the speed of the touch.
Okay.
Yeah, or if it's too fast, you might actually use your hand to slow the person down so that they're not moving super fast. Like sometimes people, like guys, maybe guys, like to go fast, but women too, for that matter. So,
and a lot of people are also
programmed
to go fast because of porn.
Exactly. So that brings up the question: how do we learn these things? How do we learn what touch is supposed to look like? So when I do a class like this, I tell everyone, okay, now one person, I pair people up and I say, one of you turn into a kitty cat. Okay, and the person who's not the kitty cat is going to be the human, and you're going to learn to pet the cat in front of you, right? And then everybody suddenly start taking the time to notice what are the signals that say yes or no, or that say more or less, faster or slower, or here or there. Here feels better than there. There doesn't feel good. So you start to extract the words that this person is speaking in kitty cat language, because we're probably better equipped at knowing how kitty cats speak than we are real humans, because we much more easily engage in that kind of language with animals than we do with humans, unless we have a close lover right next to us.
Mm-hmm. So why is it important? No, I should say, why is it essential
mm-hmm.
for men and women to begin to learn this language?
Well, I'm going to speak specifically about people who are lovers or partners. I think it's important for everyone because it's such a deeply ingrained part of us. Because below the neocortex, there's the mammalian brain and there's the reptilian brain. We're actually animals before we're humans. Our animal piece is way stronger than we imagine or that we can even feel. It's operating below at a lower level of the operating system, so to speak. So to learn more about it and to engage more with it, we become better able to engage with the world and each other, because we know it's happening. We have that awareness. We know that there's body language happening. We know there's language in touch happening. And once we know it's there, we can actually just allow it and sink into it just a lot more easily. And it's a form of mindfulness, if you want to call it somatic mindfulness or somatic awareness, or I like to call it somatic intelligence. Is how do we engage with the world, with reality, with objects around us, and with people around us, having the awareness that touch and body language is a big part of it. In fact, some people say it's the biggest part of it. The words that we exchange it's so little compared to all the other little signals that we communicate with each other, even as we speak right now. And then the words, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, it's about like attuning to more subtle frequencies and energies than is just in our conscious mind. It's going like step deeper to tune to these more subtle energies.
Well, let me put it this way. If you had a whole other channel of perception at your disposal, then that would give you a better sense of what's going on. Like imagine that one channel is your emotional intelligence, your ability to perceive things through emotions. And another channel is your ability to perceive things through your brain, your mind, your perceptive filters and your ability to look at things in conceptual ways. And what if you could add a whole other channel that allows you to perceive the world, but through somatically? And we all have that to some degree. And what if you could add another one that allows you to perceive the world in a more primal way, and another one that allows you to perceive the world in a more social way? So that'd be like adding colors to the picture that you have of the world. And the more colors you have, the more you perceive the world as it is, or more closely as it is. And then what happens is that you're internally, without realizing it, you're comparing all these inputs that are coming into you. In the same way that as a human, you're receiving things through your eyes, into your ears, into your nose, and all your five senses. So imagine that each of those channels is a different particular sense. Mm-hmm. Then you can better apprehend what's going on in the world. So for example, if you were the lover and you're very somatically intelligent, somatically and primally intelligent, then you're able to really engage with them and kind of know what's going on for them before you even have to ask them. You already know that their muscles, their body's a little tight, they're not fully relaxed. You already know what's happening, much in the same way that you would know when a cat is stressed or afraid or relaxed, or if they trust you or don't trust you. These things would just come into your consciousness without you necessarily having to think about it, in the same way that I speak these words. And you don't have to think, oh, I'm understanding this word and that word and this word and that word. You're understanding the flow of my words as a form of communication. Well, it's possible to do the same thing with animals. And because humans are animals, it's possible to do the same thing with humans.
So let me ask you a question that, okay, say you have a woman, mm-hmm. and the man is very excited and the woman's body is very juiced up. She's ready to roll, mm-hmm. Physically. Uh-huh. However, you have sex with her and later on she says, I didn't really want that because my heart wasn't ready. How do you attune, like, how do you deal with the fact that very often women's bodies are super turned on, juicy, and a full mm-hmm. yes? That mm-hmm. doesn't necessarily mean their heart is.
Absolutely. And so there's a couple of things that could be happening here, or there's a particular disconnect, right? The woman's body is into it, either just say, we could just say her body, but maybe her inner animal too, without going too much into the primal aspects of it. But yeah, I mean, they overlap, right? The animal, the body. And so that's ready. Those parts are ready, but the heart is not fully there, right? So, and the woman is not necessarily, maybe she's not able to speak up about it, either because she knows about it, but she's afraid to speak, or she doesn't know about it, because that can happen. And then on the other side, the man is, excited and wants to engage, and his body and his animals are ready to go, but he doesn't have the capacity to discern or perceive that her heart is not there. And he doesn't know how to ask to get a confirmation.
How can you see the difference? Like, what advice can you give on seeing the difference? Because I think this is extremely important, because in the Me Too movement, we're talking about like these big sexual violations, but there's this whole area of gray that I know like so many women have been in, where it's not a sexual violation or like a rape, but they weren't a full yes. So how do you tune to that?
Well, okay, so I'm going to say a couple of things. So first of all, what you're speaking of would be the development of, and this is the work that I do. You need two people who are somatically, emotionally, and primally intelligent. If there's any lack in all three on either side, there could be disconnects. Mm-hmm. It could be internal disconnect, like the woman is like, oh, my body's into it, so I'm going to go. But then later on, she's like, I wasn't really into it. And the guy's like, seems like everything's a go, and I'm a go, so I'm just going to go. And nobody's telling me to stop, right? That's part of the gray area. There's also the area of, there's a stop, and the guy's like, I don't care, I'm just going to keep going. And those are the ones that see they get a lot of the attention because they're the most obvious transgressions. But there's plenty of transgressions where you're not fully aligned as a person. Mm-hmm. You're not fully aligned, and you're not able to perceive the full alignment of the other person, or you trust that they're fully aligned because it looks like it it looks like it when you look at them, but there's something missing. So it takes enough discernment to know what's going on the other side. So if you're emotionally intelligent, your ability to discern somebody's state on the other side, somebody's emotional state, will be more obvious. If you're somatically and primally intelligent, then you'll be able to detect just by engaging in touch or even body language, you'll be like, this person's not fully present. There's something going on where they're hesitating, just like the cat who's kind of like still, you're scratching the back of their ear and they're still, they might just bat your hand any second, right? There's a human version of that. And it can look like a bit of a freeze. It doesn't have to be a full freeze state, but it looks like a maybe, so to speak. It looks like you're touching and then you stop and then nothing is happening. Or you ask the person, how do you feel? And they're like, I don't know, I feel okay, I feel good. But there's not purpose behind it. So one way to be most obvious about the checking in of it is you engage a little bit, then you back off and you see if the movement is returned in that sort of that sort of call and response motion. What is the quality of the returning message? Just like when you talk to someone and you start getting bored, or they have something else on their mind, right? They kind of like their questions become less interested or less precise. There's a diffusion that's happening. So that's one way of looking at it. But the best way, I would say, if you really want to get to know someone and want to know if they really want to have sex with you or do anything, is you don't have sex the first time. What you do is you go progressively deeper in the levels of intimacy. So you start with something simple, and then you try different steps in the dance. You try to engage with them in different ways. And with touch, it would look like touching in different places. How do they react? Do they react well? Are they able to engage back with you with as much mutuality as you give them? Are they able to meet you in the growing engagement that you create with them? Or are they stopping at some point? I think you have to gauge the quality of the engagement as it arises. And even if somebody were to say no at some point, it could just be like something came up to their mind. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a no. It could just be in that moment, there was a block, there was a challenge, and you could perceive it. You could say, oh, if you're moving with someone, you would know that. If you contact improv artists, you would know when they moved in a way that they didn't have as much balance, or maybe they have a foot that's hurt. You would detect that, but you can do that emotionally as well. And so that's why it's crucial to have as much of these types of intelligences developed, so that you can tell that something is off.
Right. And okay, so in terms of like, it's very simple reason, we can think of very obvious reasons why it's important for a man to have this deeper understanding of a woman and her body. Why is it also important for a woman to have this intelligence with a man?
Oh, I mean, I think, okay, so there's multiple reasons. So first of all, I'm going to say quickly, I think personality-wise, men tend to be more disagreeable and women more agreeable. I think statistically, 60% of women are agreeable, 60% of men are disagreeable. So you can imagine what that looks like in interaction, right? The man really wants something and he's going to push for it, and the woman is more likely to say yes because if you believe that, which I do, at a biological level, it's better for women to be agreeable because it means that they're more likely to want to take care of their children and their community, and there's a caring happening, and there's no need to fight external forces. And so at a primal level, there's something adaptive there. Now, we may not need this anymore, and we might be moving into a type of civilization where it's more 50-50. Now, having said that, even though it's more likely for men to be disagreeable and women to be agreeable, there's always moments and interactions where it's the other way around. And so you'll always have men, even if you take a man who's generally more disagreeable, there'll be times where they'll say yes, even though they don't really mean yes.
Right.
Because the other person's yes is so strong that it's hard to stop it. Or it could be that the emotions are so strong that it's hard to stop them. Or the yes is so strong, and the threat, that's my French here coming through, the threat of what will happen if I say no? How will this person react if I say no? The threat of that, or the potential removal of love, that I just have to say yes.
Or the discomfort of the vulnerability that might be there.
Of course,
not wanting to speak about that. So it's easier just to...
Yeah, it's like what's the easiest thing to do, right? Beyond that, there's also a cultural expectation. Men are always supposed to want sex, or men are always supposed to be okay with sexual touch and sensual touch. And so what that does is that it's at a cultural level and at a societal level, it stops men from being in the practice of checking in with themselves. Do I really want this? No, I have to be hard when it's time to have sex. Well, what if I'm soft? Oh, well, then you're less than a man. And so it's a cultural push towards disregarding your own feelings in favor of a type of performance.
Absolutely. And I've even heard, I have had the conversation with so many men who also even that women, if they ask for even something simple like a massage, that the man is automatically like supposed to give her a massage.
Oh yeah.
Rather than also tuning into yourself, do you really want to give her a massage? And I've talked to like 20 men who talk about that, like they find themselves massaging women all the time when they aren't a full yes, and that kind of touch is actually not nourishing for anyone.
Yeah, and on top of that, what if the man actually is attracted to this woman and is like, how do I give a massage that's a real giving of a massage without the other thing, without my attraction playing into it? Which, if you know about the Will of Consent by Betty Martin, would be more of a taking. And it's really difficult. So, and it's interesting because the Will of Consent, you really like isolates the taking, allowing, and the giving, receiving. I think they call it serving now. It's brilliant. But here's the thing: animals don't do that. Animals are either left or right, giving, taking, and top or bottom, which means that they're always overlapping 3 areas. So when you're engaging with a cat or a dog, you'll notice that they're either in the receiving mode or the giving mode, or switching back and forth, and they're always in the doing and being done to. And so as humans, we can isolate, but most of the time when you were the lover, you're like playing Twister on that giving, receiving, taking, allower. You're like just switching back and forth, but you're mostly occupying 3 areas. But that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
So I just want to go back to the language of touch for a second. So we've covered a lot of ground. The basic principle of it is that in order to know, it's like it's not about what you're saying and what they're saying. It's like that comes out naturally. Like people think, oh, I'm gonna try to say this thing. I'm gonna try to say I love you in touch, but it's actually a lot easier to just feel love and allow the touch to occur by itself. Because it's way too easy to say, I'm going to make my body do this, this, and that. And you're driving your body to try to say something. But the real communication happens in the authentic arising of the emotion through touch. And the same is true for sex as well. Like how many people have found themselves in a situation where they want to perform sex? And I want to say there's nothing wrong with that. There are places for that. But if you look at sex as a way to communicate your love and share your love with somebody else, then it's more about allowing the dance and allowing the movement, allowing the touch to occur, or allowing how you feel to translate into touch. And your body knows that. That's a natural ability, but it takes practice to do it well. It takes practice to not do and not perform, but instead allow it to arise and allow it to move. It's like you show up on a dance floor and you start doing dance move versus like stopping for a second, feeling the beat and allowing your body to move to the beat. And there's two very different ways to dance.
Absolutely. And obviously there's a certain amount of embodiment in your own body and your own, like with your own body and just connection with yourself, because what we're talking about is tapping into the body wisdom, your own body wisdom with this person, but you have to be tapped into your own body wisdom, and those people are functioning mostly in their heads and a bit disconnected from their body.
So should we do an exercise before we, it seems like we've been going on for let's do an exercise. Okay, I'm going to call in my lovely assistant, and you're going to do the same.
I don't know where my touch person went. I think they're on the phone, right? I think we're all booked in earlier, and then hi.
This is my lovely assistant, Kaine. Okay, so I just want to say for those people, those of you who are by yourself or either quarantined by yourself or you there's just nobody in your house you could do this with, no pets in the house that you could do this with. We're gonna start.
I can do it with my dog. Come here, Lila.
Yeah, you have a cat?
Come here, dog. Come on.
Or dog, or your dog, of course, perfect. Okay, so if you're alone, she's such a cutie. Okay, so if you're, so we're gonna start by doing this alone. So you can, Shezza, you can just stay with your dog. That's fine. Oh, did I lose you? Oh no, I might have lost you.
We're here.
Oh, there you are.
Are you here?
Whew. Yep, I'm here.
Oh no.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here.
okay,
Okay.
we're good.
So we're gonna start this alone, and I'm gonna show this to Shezza and to Kaine and Shezza. You can do this alone, just for starters. So for those of you who are alone, you can still play. And so we're gonna start with the first thing. So just sit on your chair, or you could be standing. Make sure that you can hear me. Turn up the volume. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna feel into your body. You're gonna use touch with just your hand to feel your body. And what I want you to do is just focus on what feels good. So start by just putting your hand on your arm or your leg, and start to focus on just what feels good, and keep moving towards something that feels good. And you can try different things, and just notice if it feels good, do more of that. If it doesn't feel good, do less of it. And you don't have to do anything specific, but just continue to explore in pressure and speed and also location. Try harder or lighter. Or try faster or slower. Just notice the response. If the response is good, then note that. If the response is like, not that great, then notice that. The more you do it, and that's a practice, a very simple practice of self-pleasure, is you just want to focus on what feels good and what doesn't. And then you naturally will meander down that path and naturally do more of the things that feel good and less of the things that don't feel good. But sometimes you'll try something just to see, I wonder if that still doesn't feel good. You'll pinch that one place. And what I want you to do now is just kind of slow down about half the speed. and now focus on staying in alignment with the pleasure in your body, whatever that means to you. Stay with the pleasure. Make sure you don't go faster or slower or harder or lighter than you have to go. Stay in that just right place. See if you can stay there as you move around your body. Good. Very, very easy. We all know how to do it. We often do it without thinking. Like we'll massage our neck when it's stressed and tight. You will know just how much pressure to put in, and just how fast and how hard, and we'll adjust automatically. And that's it. I call that somatic alignment. It's very easy, right? Got it?
Got it.
All right, so that's easy. Now we're gonna go to emotional alignment. So you're gonna close your eyes. I'm gonna feel into your heart. You can put your hand there if that feels right. And just notice how you feel. And I find inside your heart, find a place that feels good, that feels right. It's there. It's very, very easy to find. Imagine it's like falling into a warm bath. Just relax into it. Nothing complicated. Nothing that requires a huge amount of attention. Just know that warm bath feeling inside your heart. Maybe there's memories that come back to you around that, or things you associate with the warm bath. Or maybe like just standing outside and with the face in towards the sun, or a real warm bath. Or maybe being cuddled with a partner. There's something about that just feels just right. So take that as use that as a reference point. That's emotional, call that emotional balance or emotional alignment. Got it?
Got it.
Cool. That's easy. Okay, now, now the next piece is you're going to feel into your inner animal. So see if there's a part of your body that feels like your inner animal, but maybe as you start to call out your inner animal, close your eyes, maybe you'll start to move in different ways, or maybe your belly is the spot, or maybe you start to squirm. There's like, it feels like there's that animal inside that wants to move you. And so as you do that, like imagine that there's an invisible hand just petting your inner animal. Just calming you, like there's a groundedness and there's an aliveness that connects you to that animal. See if you can sort of ask your animal to just sort of like kind of sit right next to you, ready to move. And then when you have that, just come back to the room. All right. So that's what I call primal alignment. This kind of sense of your animal is ready, aware, alive, and just aware of what's going on and just full of aliveness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So now close your eyes.
I was difficulty with the animal one, but
okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. So now what I want you to do is close your eyes and feel all of these three things together. Physical pleasure. You could put your hand somewhere if that helps. Or feel a physical and somatic goodness. And then that emotional just rightness. And also this kind of poise, the liveness of your animal. I want you to feel all three and allow them to kind of superimpose on top of each other inside of you.
Wow.
Easy, simple. And you don't have to worry too much about it. That's just anchor points, reference points. Okay, so now, if you're alone, what you're gonna do is you're going to use one hand to touch the rest of your body. And you're gonna allow this one hand to be a little bit more separate from you. Like it has its own, a mind of its own. Maybe like as if it were the hand of somebody else. And you're gonna have it like explore your body. Okay. If you're with somebody else, or if you're with one of your pets, what you're going to do is you're going to pick someone to receive and someone to give. And the person who's giving will be that hand. And the person who's receiving will be the receiver. And as the receiver, your only job is to receive with as much yes as you can, with as much alignment in your body, animal, and heart. And if things get out of whack, see if you can create a signal with your body. Either make a sound or squirm or just like translate the lack of alignment in any way that feels right to you. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so we're gonna try it. So if you're with a partner, you're gonna do this with your partner and then we'll switch. We'll do that for a couple of minutes. So it's very simple. If you're the person touching, don't just touch to touch to explore, touch to discover, and touch to learn. Okay, so it's going to be a learning, curious touch. And don't make your body don't make your body do things. Just feel into the curiosity and the exploration, and allow it to arise into your hand, and then explore with the other person. And the person will be in a position of receptivity and learning about themselves with you. Okay? All right. So we're going to do this for 2 minutes. So if you're alone, you do it with one hand, kind of like a separate hand, but still touching you. And if you're with a partner, you do it with your partner. So in one direction only. All right? Okay. And then you're already doing it, Shezza. So you're doing great. And you've been doing this for such a long time with your puppy dog that she knows exactly what's going on. But it's the same thing. So whatever we're seeing with you and your dog, we see that with adults and their children. We see that it becomes this sort of unconscious dance. Like at first we're conscious because if we don't know the person very well, we don't know what to do and we feel a little self-conscious. But over time, it just kind of sinks in deeper and deeper into our psyche and we forget about it. But lovers,
it's very important for couples that have been together for a really long time to still tune into these practices.
Yeah. Like some people believe that you should always use consent, but there's a form of consent that is between us and animals and between us at a primal level and other people at a primal level that always knows that they can say no. Mm-hmm. Animals always know that if they're not happy, they'll yelp, they'll squirm, they'll bat, they'll hiss, they'll know what to do. And that's how they communicate. That's how they communicate the edges of what feels good. Otherwise, the movements and the signals are much more subtle. And so your purpose right now is to discover those signals about your partner. So we're going to do this for 2 minutes. Can we do this for 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Or a minute? Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to do this with Kaine. And I'm just gonna put her. You can also, of course, just watch and see what happens. All right. Can you back up a little bit so it's more easier to see? And then I'll try to speak up. I'll try to speak as I'm doing it also. Okay, so close your eyes. So I've been with Kaine for 6 or 7 months. So there's a lot of our nonverbal language that we already know how to speak that I've done before, and I've seen her response and I've learned from it. And I just went there because it just made sense to me as a place to start. Some of it is just habit. And some of it is just, right now, it's like the palm of my hand feels warm and it feels good. And I'm following that for myself. But the other night I was touching the back of her butt and it was cold and it was really interesting. So I kept on touching it just to learn about her body. And as we touch and we move, we learn about texture and how the skin moves. And it's like we learn to dance with each part of the body in different ways. Oh, now she's ticklish. And I felt that through my hand. And even though I'm not necessarily thinking about what I'm learning, I am learning. I'm paying attention and I'm learning, oh, this part is ticklish. This part is not ticklish. And it's like I'm mapping her body through the responses that she gives me. And I'm also following the sensations that occur in my body, the warmth on my fingers, the texture of her hair. And we do this with pets too. You're doing this right now, Shezza, and you don't even think about it. Like you're petting his ear, or is it her? Is it her?
Her.
Her. You're petting her ear. She reacts. You adjust. She reacts. You adjust. And you've been doing this for years. Okay? There's a beauty. Oh, look at the belly.
She's in heaven.
She's in heaven because she knows she can trust you because your connection with her has been going on for a long time. And connection naturally leads to trust. And trust naturally leads to sovereignty and consent. And by consent, I mean this sort of like desire to want to find out what will happen if you touch her a little bit more. Oh, probably it's going to feel good, right? So she trusts that because she knows that the times that you've done it wrong and you've reacted with the right kind of correction to adjust to her yelp and her squirming. And that all of that sort of it creates a system of feedback.
I actually have to admit that when I got Lila, she didn't really like touch. And I'm like a touch fanatic. That's like who I am. And I had to train this dog how to be more touchy-feely.
Yep. Yeah. And she's learned from you, and you've done it such a good job that she loves it. And the same is true between lovers or between father or parent and child. And the same is true between animal and human. I mean, we hear that about how there's this sort of telepathic thing that happens between a rider and the horse, right? Well, we also have that kind of telepathic sort of ability between us and our inner animal. And that's why it's important to develop that sense of what's this sense of aliveness? How does this sense of aliveness shifting over time? How is the pleasure in the touch changing over time? Like, it's not just yes, 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 yes. It's a, oh, this feels good. This feels a little bit better. This feels a little bit better. Oh, this doesn't feel as good. And it keeps doing this, right? In the pleasure of the touch. But it also feels like this in the emotions that arise within us. And it also feels like this in the ways that our animal is just aware of the environment and our aliveness grows up and down. So
beautiful.
Ideally, you do this with all three overlapped, and it's constant alignment. And when you don't feel the full alignment, then you stop and you wait. You wait to see what happens. And in the waiting, that person might say, you know what? I don't really want to have sex right now. Or maybe that's not the right thing. Or maybe we should do something else. Maybe we should pause. Maybe we should try jumping jacks. Maybe we should do, strawberries on the belly. It's like you allow for new things to arise because the current direction wasn't quite it. And you have to slow down and listen to actually really know what the next thing is.
And some people might just need more talking time, more connecting, more heart. Yeah.
So I always say, don't try to do fast what you can't do slow first. So start with small steps. And so a lot of people, their hormones are raging, or their animals like, rawr, I want to fuck. And, their heart's not there yet. Or their body hasn't been fully turned on yet. Or maybe the body and the heart and the animal are ready to go, like you were explaining, but the heart you haven't checked all the right boxes yet. Or maybe this person has trauma and their heart's into it, but their body is not turned on yet. Or vice versa, right? So to be able to learn that, you have to go into these small experiments. So let's go on a little tour here. Let's go on a little ride there. Let's go on a little walk in this part of our body exploration or heart exploration and see what shows up. And in that connection process and feedback loop process, then more trust can arise. And then from there, there's more of a sense that if something happens to me, I know I can speak up. I know I can say something. And if it's not verbal, then it can just be my body is like, will react in a weird way. And the other person is like, somewhere deep inside, like some red flags are going to pop up and it'll be like, hey, do you want to slow down? Or do you want to do something else? Or maybe it's not the right time. Like I've noticed this so many times where I'm engaging with someone and their body is saying not yet. And I'm like, something's off. I'm not feeling as into it as I was suddenly. Because I'm listening, but with my body or with my heart, not just with words.
Right. Beautiful, Philippe. I love it. It's an important conversation. It's a really important conversation for us all to be having.
Yeah.
And for us all to be feeling like these deeper yeses and nos, that yes and no is not just a word, it's an embodied experience.
Well, also remember that the way when you were engaging in touch, it's a constant, how about this? How about this? How about this? How about this? How about it? Just the way you're touching her right now, like her body is giving you answers every second, right? You're saying yes, right? But it's like a continuous yes, right? But with a cat, it might be like you reach a part of the body and suddenly she'll be batting your hand, right? Yeah. So it is a constant affirmative consent conversation when we're touching.
Beautiful.
And it's important to keep on listening. So I just want to thank my lovely assistant. Thank you so much. Oh, and also, and last bit is I wrote a whole ebook about many of these practices. We just did like a very oversimplified version of it. So I'll be posting the link to it, and you guys can just go and enjoy it. There's like one practice per week. So
awesome.
Go ahead and
thank you so much, Philippe. You're awesome.
You're welcome.
Love you guys. And we'll be Taina, we're running a little late because of the Zoom issues. So Taina and I will be on shortly. Yeah.
All right.
Taina Ishal, she's a super goddess. So love you guys.
I love you.
Bye.
Bye.